there everyone, Lone Wolf here. Just before this video starts, I think it's fair that I give a bit of an explanation for why I was gone for the past few weeks. So pretty much what happened was that just as I was about to, resume recording for this one video, the whole, cynicism and media video, I ended up getting sick. And for the past week and a half, I just felt so miserable and it threw all plans that I had previously just completely out the window. So that happened. But along the way, as I was slowly getting better, I was starting to play this game called Hi-Fi Rush, which just kind of shadow dropped out of nowhere. And I was like, you know what? I could just make a review about this game while I'm also working on a video. So of course, let us get into the video. Hi-Fi Rush honestly feels like a game that came out 15 years ago, from an era that has been long forgotten in gaming that really hasn't been returned since. And when I say that, I mean it in a good way, not in the weird type of console fanboy type way. Because yes, Faye, sad people like that still exist in the year of 2023 to where they argue about which plastic box is better than the other one. And when I say in a good way, I mean it in the sense that, well, Hi-Fi Rush honestly stands out so much as compared to so many other games. So many games try to pursue realism as opposed to having more stylistic type of look, and to have to be a lot more simplistic and have them just be this underpriced with everything at $60 or even $70 is honestly kind of crazy. But enough of that, and let's talk about the presentation for this game, eh? So a lot of people like to point fingers towards this game and like to say that it feels like a spiritual successor to Sunset Overdrive, when in all honesty, with a huge emphasis on music that this game has, I have to say, this game feels more like a mix between Scott Pilgrim meets a bit of Cyberpunk and then Sunset Overdrive, if I were going to be honest. And then on top of that, I just have to say, I love about how this game looks. Like, I feel like I already talked about the more expressive art style before, but man, I just love Mandalay Island as a whole, and by the time that I got to the ending of this game, I just felt a bit sad, not because I was upset at the game, but because, man, I just wanted more, especially because there's always this giant V tower in the background along with that city, in which I was just like, man, I can't wait to go fight here in this game, only for that to unfortunately never happen. Like, no, seriously, if there's ever a sequel to this game or something, I want a part where we just fight on top of that giant V tower or just within that city backdrop, because damn it, this place just looks too massive for its own good. But how about we move on into the gameplay? So when it comes to the gameplay of Hi-Fi Rush, it's split in between two segments. One of those segments being combat and the other one being platforming. So of course, let us start with combat because it's pretty much the first thing that we're introduced to upon playing this game. So if I were going to describe the combat in this game in a nutshell, I'd say it's pretty fun throughout. But at the same time, you can tell when the game starts to get more challenging as it progresses, and in a pretty simple way too. Because see, whenever this game throws a new mechanic at you, sure, it gives you a little test run segment or just a full-on tutorial, but after that little segment, it just straight up tells the player, okay, we're not gonna go handhold you and just straight up throw you into the action. And I feel like one of the best examples of this is the parry and also being able to call in Shy's friends. So to start off with being able to call in Shy's friends, in this game there are only certain enemies that can be dealt with by a certain way. So for example, Peppermint can be used for enemies that have a bubble shield surrounding them and are typically blue coated. Meanwhile, Macaron can take down enemies with G shielding, which are typically green coated. And then there's Corsica, which can take down enemies which are fire types, which are red coated. But the thing about them is that after the game tells you about this whole little mechanic once, it just fully trusts you about how to deal with it, and it just says, okay, now you just gotta find your way about how to deal with one enemy while trying to avoid the other. It feels challenging in a way, but at the same time just feels right. And then of course there's also the parry. So let me tell you, the parry is a bit of an interesting thing, because you get one tutorial for this segment, one little test run to tell you that, oh yeah, you could parry basically every enemy in this game, and after that it's essentially an entire part of the game. Every enemy could pretty much, as I say, can be parried at the same time, and there's only certain enemies that can be beaten with a parry like these super stuffed enemies which look like animals, and also this other guy called the Brutal, I think, which will divert all their attention to them and require you to go parry them in order to possibly one-shot them or beat them up a bit more until they inevitably die. And this also counts with boss fights too, because once again, as I said, the game doesn't handhold you or tell you about specific things that you can do. It just says, okay, go ahead and defeat this enemy. And upon playing this game for the first time, the last 3 bosses of this game completely beat my ass. But upon revisiting the game and using the parry to my advantage, I actually got an S rank on all 3 of them. And man, let me tell you, it was one of the most satisfying things ever. And of course, let me move on to the whole rhythm segment of the game. So when it comes to the music in this game, I just want to say it's fucking amazing, and if you were to play this game on mute for some very weird and odd reason, I'm gonna say that you're robbing yourself of an experience, alright? But when it comes to the music in this game, as I was saying earlier, it's pretty much this game's lifeblood, because everything is centered around the beat of the music. Chai himself, whether if he's standing idly or running in this game, which is a slow-ass run by the way, is always to the beat of the music. Hell, even some of the platforms within the world will also move to the beat of the music, which kind of make platforming a bit tricky half the time. And if I were to criticize one thing about this game's platforming, it has to be Chai's jump. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but it just feels way too stiff and way too fast for its own good. Like, maybe if it were like a tad more floaty, like, then maybe I would tolerate it a bit more than I did. But man, I just wish it were changed just a tiny bit, if you get what I mean. But also, this whole rhythm aspect of the game also plays an important part whenever Chai interacts with the world, as I mentioned. Because outside of stuff like platforming, whenever he does something like use a grapple hook or call in his friends, there's always a little musical cue that always plays with it. And it's a cool little thing to see about how no matter what you do in this game, there's always going to be something about the beat which is just always there. But how about we move on into the little bit of story and then the conclusion of this video. So while I'm not going to directly spoil the story, I am going to go over the basic plot synopsis of the game and just give my thoughts on everything. So of course, let us end off the video. So the story follows our main character Chai, which is a normal dude minding his own business until he finds out about this name named Project Armstrong. He signs up for said project in hopes of becoming a rock star, but without knowing the devious intent behind it, ends up getting a mark on his and it ends up getting chased down by Vandalay Industries. He ends up running into this girl named Peppermint, which helps them along the way, and they also meet a few other folks and find out that Vandalay Industries is working on this little thing named Spectra, which is a mind control device for the sake of business reasons. And well, sure, you could say that the story is a bit generic with the whole unlikely group of friends fighting against a corporation trying to take over the world. It's fun. And I feel like that's all that really matters at the end of the day. Because this game is just filled with so much charm that there's never a time that you could look at one of the cutscenes and go like, yeah bro, this is boring. Because it's just so, I don't know, unashamed of being about what it is. And I have heard a few people saying that this game is on like the same level of Forspoken when it comes to the writing, and all I'm gonna say in response is that those people are fucking delusional. Forspoken and Hi-Fi Rush are 2 completely different games, and while one game tries to take itself seriously with shitty MCU dialogue and with terribly written characters, Hi-Fi Rush is a game that doesn't take itself seriously and wears its goofy influence on its shoulders throughout the story. It has heartfelt moments and honestly has characters which are a whole lot more likable than they are in Forspoken. But that's all I really have to say. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video, enjoy the outro, and see y'all in another video soon. Later, folks.